everyone, and welcome to Pen to Paper. I'm Leah Lindman and the author of the Canadian Reminiscence series, which is a historical fiction series. So if you like historical fiction with subgenres, then go ahead and look down at the video description box below and you can find the links there to my books. So today I'm going to be jumping into what I've read for September and what I thought of each book and my star ratings. And I did not read too much this month because there was a lot going on, and I'm not going to overwhelm myself by trying to tack on more books than necessary. And I also had a really shaky beginning to this month because I had to deal with some under the weather issues that had to do with feeding my baby. And I was not feeling well for several days, and I was trying to read The Last Stand. I got up until page 35 and I just couldn't take it anymore. I had massive headaches, fevers. It was very, very terrible. So I had to put that aside, and I thought that maybe I could read a more fluffy book. So I chose the next book that I was wanting to read, which was Bad Luck Bride by Jana McGregor. And that I was reading with Andrea Janelle Reads on Instagram. They had decided to read that Regency romance for this month. And unfortunately, I missed the Zoom call. I thought I had it on my Google Calendar. Turns out I didn't, I guess. And that was unfortunate. And it was fun to know that I was reading it with another group of people that wanted to enjoy this historical romance. So I'll start off a little bit by what the story is about. It's about this woman back in the Regency period who has had 3 fiancés already, but somehow either they're dying or one was sent out of the country because he would go to prison. Just she has bad luck with trying to find a husband and be settled in her life. And so she has this curse that people have dubbed her with, and basically she's been relegated to be a spinster for the rest of her life. And so zoom out and zoom into a different character, Lord Alex. He has a tiff or a revenge plot for his once long ago best friend Paul, Lord Paul, who he believes has ill-treated his sister and led her to commit suicide. And so he is about to duel him, but then the duel doesn't go through, and he comes up with this revenge plot to basically take all his land away, his money away, and just drive him dirt poor. And part of that plan is the girl who has had bad luck with finding husbands. She was supposed to marry Lord Paul, but now that he is driven into the ground by this Alex decides that to save her dignity and to save basically her from more whispers and gossip about the curse, that he will marry her instead. And so obviously, their relationship is based on the fact that he does not tell her that she is part of his revenge plot, and you could see how that would cause a lot of issues. So, let me go into some things I did enjoy. I enjoyed just being swept up again in that time period. That's one of my favorite time periods to read about. It was a fluffy read. There was not much to it. I guess I read it at the right time because I was not feeling well and I really couldn't take anything too deep or too complicated. So it was good for what I needed. The writing, there was nothing spectacular about it. I mean, there was one sentence that had very cold and very angry and very this, and I'm just reading this as an author thinking, this is terrible writing. Find some other words that really convey the meaning you want to convey. So there was that. And then there was the whole fact, I mean, I guess the characters weren't too frustrating. They were pretty likable overall. Alex needed a little bit more tough skin and just more courage in being able to tell, oh goodness, I can't remember her name, maybe it's Clara, why she was part of his whole plan. So that was a little frustrating, but not too much. But overall, I liked it. I'm giving it a 3 stars. Nothing special, but it was just the right amount of fluffiness that I needed at the time when I was reading it. Next, I read, by the way, I did not end up picking up The Last Stand after that. This month was just busy in terms of getting back into the groove of homeschooling my kids. And also, I just put on this youth event at my church this past Saturday that required a lot of preparation. I had basically 1 month. We weren't too sure how we were going to do things with, COVID protocols and restrictions, but we were able to pull off the event well with everything in place to keep everyone safe. But that just required a lot of prep and a lot of extra time that I just was not able to give toward reading. So I will keep moving on with it in this coming month. I really do want to read it. And whatever I did read, the first 35 pages were very interesting. So I will get back to it. But next I read Eve in Exile by Rebecca Merkel. I'm giving this a 4 stars. There were some areas that I really, wanted more meat, more exposition on. But overall, it was a good read. It talks about, it's a nonfiction book, first of all. It deals with the whole idea of femininity and what is true femininity, and the feminism movement that happened, starting even before Jane Austen was born, with Mary Shelley and her life. And Mary Shelley, by the way, is the woman who wrote Frankenstein, and her life and what she stood for. And then the feminist movement, starting with the suffrage and temperance movements, and how, women who fought for rights. Then it moved into the 50s, where women were mostly ornamental and were not expected to do much outside the house. And then how in the 60s that completely, the tables turned, and how women again were casting aside homemaking in general just to go out and make a name for themselves. So there is a lot in this book, but one thing I really wanted to share that really touched my heart and has kind of reminded me of something that is good. She makes the point of how if you are in a home situation where you have kids, not that you can't go out of the home, but that your main focus should be on the well-being of your kids and the well-being of your home. You can still go out and work, you can still go out and enjoy life and, truly have a life for yourself, but all while making sure that your home is the focus where you want to really excel. And a lot of people think that being a mom or being a homemaker is something that you shouldn't really aspire to. There's not much to it. It's just basically a kind of low down run job where you have to clean all the time. And yes, that's part of it. You do have to clean. You have to do laundry. You have to do dishes, clothes, whatever. But there's a lot of beauty in running a home. And it's taken me many, many years, and just my thinking about this has also changed over time. How I've gone through some time where I've had good systems in place, and just recently I realized that my systems in place have not been working out. And I guess that's also part of why I've really slowed down in reading, and a little bit of booktubing in August and September, because I just needed that time to really meditate and think about what is best for my kids and what is best for my home, and really focusing my energies there. And so this book, along with a recent conversation I had, even just with my parents, have really hit the nail in the coffin I don't think I'm saying that correctly, but whatever. And have just made me realize that that's something that I need to make sure my focus is on. So I really did appreciate that from this book. As I said, not that I can't go out, not that I can't have a life or, you know, work out. Not that women can't work outside the home. That can be a very good thing, but just making sure that your people, which is your partner and your kids, those people are really being served to the best of your capacities, and that a good chunk of your energies are focused there. So that way the home is in unity and peace and a sense of well-being. And so that's something I'm going to work on, something that I need to put some systems in place, say no to a few things, not booktubing, I'm still doing this, but just understanding that I can give myself time or moments where I just need to say no and just really focus on my family, because I am shaping these little lives and training them to hopefully be good citizens, loving people, and that requires a lot of effort and sacrifice on my part that I am very happy to make. But it was just a really good reminder to do that. And last but not least, I also read Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. He's Swedish. And this story was so interesting. It was about a bank robbery. It was a book about idiotic people. And it was a book about love and life. This book I read in 2 days because I didn't realize when my book club was going to be speaking about this book and discussing it. And then I realized 2 days before our meeting that we were going to be discussing it. So I was like, okay, I need to read this book fast. And I read through the whole thing. But what was interesting was that the style of writing really suited the speed reading. I was reading The Last Stand by Stephen King. I don't think I could really speed read through that too much. It's his writing style, or at least in that book, I find that I need to give it more attention. But Anxious People, I was really able to speed read through it. And it was such an interesting story. Yes, it was about a bank robbery, and it kind of reminded me of the movie, I think it's called Flashpoint, where you see the terrorist act happen, but from different people's perspectives over the whole movie. And then as you're going through the perspectives, little by little more is revealed about the plot. And it kind of had that feeling where you're finding out more and more about the bank robbery through present and past. Present when the police are interviewing not the suspects, the hostages, and then you see how the hostages were relating to the bank robber. And you really, although it is a book that has that light suspense to it, it is also a book about life. His descriptions about the characters' pain points and life philosophies and their loves and pains and pleasures, he had such an interestingly direct way of making you connect with them in a deep way, but never really, when he took you out of the story to say those things, it wasn't jarring. I actually felt like it really flowed really well, surprisingly, because I don't know, that's just me. Maybe some people didn't find that. But I found that he did it was very intuitive how he moved from the story to talk about what the characters were thinking, feeling, and just almost like an ode to life in general. So it was very interesting. And then you find out what really happened, because when the hostages are released. And then when the police go upstairs, there's nobody there in the apartment, and there's no place for the robber to hide. So how did the robber escape? Or how did it come to be that they can't find him? And so you find out little by little as the plot kind of is told through different viewpoints between past and present. you find out what happens, and it's quite extraordinary. So I gave Anxious People 4.5 stars. I really, really liked it. I didn't love it. There was just, I don't know what it was. There was just something missing. I'm giving it 5 stars on Goodreads though, just to help bump up the rating. But definitely one of the more interesting books I've read this year in terms of writing style and story. So that's it for my reading this month. Again, there wasn't too much, but I'm really excited about October because I'm actually not choosing what I'm reading this month. My good friend Jay Maddox from The World According to Jay is choosing my TBR for this month. So he chose some really great titles, and they all are horror from indie horror authors, I believe. The only one that I decided I need to read this month is The Gunslinger by Stephen King, because The Gunslinger is the book we're going to be reading with the Rambling Readers, and we're going to be doing a live show on that probably the 2nd or 3rd Sunday in October. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm not too sure what I'm going to think of it because 2 of the girls don't seem to like it. Well, one for sure, the other maybe not. So I will give you all that info when I get the information. But the other books are, I gotta find them. So when I reminded Jay about all the October reads that he was going to pick for me, it was the day before October and he still hadn't picked it. But that's okay. He is a quick thinker on his feet, and he just gave me all the titles that I need to read by the end of this month. So that will be a very interesting book discussion since it will all have been horror. But the first book on the list is Inheriting Her Ghosts by S.H. Cooper. I don't really know what any of these have to do with anything. I don't know the synopses, so don't expect anything until the end of the month. And then I have Ali Shea To Offer Her Pleasure. That is the next one. And then I have Ross Jeffrey, Only the Stains Remain. I'm really looking forward to that one because that has had amazing reviews from a lot of booktubers that I love to listen to. And then I've got Below by Kev Harrison. That one sounded really fun. And then Beverly Lee, The House of Bones. And that's it. Those are all the books. I didn't even count how many of those were. You can do that. So that's my October TBR. Also, after this talk about, well, basically, I'm going to say goodbye for now, but I'm tacking on last week's video that I just didn't have time to get out because, as I said, I was putting that youth event on, and that took up too much of my time. So I'm tacking on last week's video to this week's video, and last week's video was a book tag. So I hope you enjoy. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like and subscribe, ring the bell, and comment below what was your favorite read this past month, and what are you looking forward to reading in October? I'd love to hear your answers. So today we are doing a book tag. I actually have 2 tags. I was going to do 2 tags, but then I realized 2 tags is going to take me too long to figure out books for the prompts. So I'm just doing 1. Now, I believe someone tagged me maybe a month ago to do a certain tag, and I told them that that would be the first tag I would do whenever I got around to a tag week. But I cannot remember for the life of me who tagged me and what tag it was. So if you're watching this, can you please remind me what you tagged me for if you remember? Yeah, I'm sorry that I forgot. I should really be writing these down because I got 2 tags, but as I said, I'm only doing 1 this week. So this one, I was tagged by Berna's Bookish Adventures, and I will put down the link to the original tag in the description below, and also Berna's Bookish Adventures, the tag that she did. But today it is the Eclectic Book Reader Tag, which actually really suits me because I do have quite an eclectic taste of genres and subgenres that I like to dive into. So let's start with the questions. Question number 1 is, I'm just going to find it here on my phone. Where do you get your book recommendations? From a variety of sources. I am getting a lot of book recommendations now from BookTube, which I really enjoyed this journey the last year that I've been watching all of your. For those of you who I follow and are subscribed to, I really enjoy watching your blogs, your vlogs, your book reviews, your tags, and the books that you all bring up. So anytime I hear something really interesting, it's going on my TBR, and now it's just really expanding and it's getting massive. But that's okay because I have my whole life to read books, so I'm really looking forward to that. But yes, you guys are a huge source of what I want to try next. Also, sometimes when I get the Goodreads emails in my account and they'll let me know of books that I've read from a certain author and that author has a new book out, then I'll check that out. Or if they know I like a certain genre, then they will promote certain books to me from that genre, and then I'll just kind of take a look at the synopsis, and if it's something that's interesting, I will add it to my TBR. Also, if there's family or friends that have read a book and they say, oh, this is so good, you should check it out, and I'll do that too. So that is where I get the bulk of my reading recommendations from. Question number 2. How do you decide what to read next? So because, as I said, I'm getting a lot of my recommendations from all of you, I'm finding it's a little bit more difficult because I wish I could read more during the month, more than, let's say, sometimes a measly 4 or 5 books. But if that's all I can get done, then that's what I can get done. But I guess the books that have really stood out tend to get bumped up to the priority list. For November and December, I've pretty much planned most of those TBRs. And I know December, I want it to be kind of a magical month, so I'm going to be probably reading a lot of fantasy then. And then for November, I just kind of go with how I'm feeling, but also with books that I know I really, really want to read sooner rather than later. And then also I have a local book club that I read with, so those books always come in for the months that we're reading. And that's how I choose my books. Question number 3, how has your reading taste changed over time? That's easy. I think when I was younger, I read a lot of safe things. So my safe things were Chronicles of Narnia, Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, and then I started reading a lot of Christian historical fiction. And then classics. So that was my safe zone, but I'd say even just in the last 2 years, I've been reading more nonfiction. And then especially this year, with a lot of my book reviewer friends being horror book reviewers, that has really stretched me out of my comfort zone. So in that sense, I've already dug into that genre, and I am enjoying it. There are a lot of great reads out there. So I would say my reading tastes have really expanded past my comfort zone, and because of that, my comfort zone has expanded, and I'm reading more books that are more instinctively challenging to me, not so much intellectually, but just the type of content that I'm reading. But I am enjoying that very much. I enjoy seeing the world from a different perspective and understanding where that author came from and how it affected their writing. And I would say the same has happened to my writing as well. I'm just going to throw that in there, that I felt with my first book, I wrote what I was familiar with and comfortable with, and then my second book, I really felt like my comfort zone was being stretched. And with the book I'm working on right now, it is not, it is more of a divisive issue, and yeah, it's really unknown territory that I'm going into with this one. So my reading and my writing have really gone hand in hand with just stretching what I'm comfortable with, but in the best of ways. Number 4, what genres, subgenres do you never or usually never read? The genre I almost never usually read is sci-fi. Not that I don't like it, I'm just not inherently drawn to it. And I could probably name on my one hand the science fiction books I've read. So the Dune series, the main Dune series, because there's like other series that branch off of that one, but just the main Dune series, and I still haven't finished it. I think I've gone up to book 4, but there's one more book, and they're just so jam-packed and so full of, like, they're very heavy books, so I'll read one, it takes me a while to read it, and then I'll kind of read some fluff, but I haven't gotten back into the last book, so I might have to reread them, especially with the movie coming out, but we'll see. So the Dune books, Ender's Game, and then Veronica Roth, I think she wrote the Divergent series. She put out a science fiction book. I think there's a sequel to it. I can't remember what it's called. So that, I think that's it. A very, very small amount. Maybe books that have had science fiction elements to it, but it is not a genre I read very often. And the last question is, what are 5 specific subgenres you enjoy, and include a book recommendation or 2 for each? So I did find 5. I read a lot of subgenres, a lot of different genres, hence the Eclectic Book Reader Tag, but I'm going to give you 5. So my first one here, I'm going to go with a subgenre of horror. We call it cosmic horror or Lovecraftian horror. And with another book club I was a part of a year ago, we decided to kind of get into horror for the first time. And we read Edgar Allan Poe, which he's classic, but also H.P. Lovecraft. And he had been someone I had never read before. We read The Call to Cthulhu and another one. I really enjoyed The Call to Cthulhu, but there was one that I read and I was looking through the titles and I couldn't remember what the title was, that struck me so hard, and I was haunted by the story even days after I read it. It was so mind-blowing, and the way he described the experience almost felt as if he had gone through that, and that you, the reader, have gone through that. It was quite something. It was about a young man in maybe a town in Europe or Italy, and he is drawn to this abandoned abbey / type of castle ruins, and he goes through it, and it's a very haunting presence, and he goes up to this tower where I believe there's some sort of icon or ball or staff or something that he's drawn to, and there's this evil that's calling to him. That was something. And then I won't spoil it. And I can't even remember what it's called. So if any of you know what I'm talking about, please let me know the title. And second subgenre that I really enjoy is high fantasy. So for that book recommendation would be Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. That is, out of that and the Court of Thorns and Roses, I really enjoy the Throne of Glass series. I haven't read her House of Something of Blood. House of Something in Blood. Yeah, I haven't read that yet. I will, because I really do enjoy Sarah J. Maas's writing. But Throne of Glass is definitely my high fantasy recommendation. And then I have, for a detective, I have Dr. Detective, which is one that I find very interesting because maybe some of you know this, maybe some of you don't, but before I became an author and became a homemaker, I wanted to be a surgeon, a cardiothoracic surgeon. And just that shifted to being a homemaker because I met my husband and I really wanted to have kids at a young age and really just stay at home with them and focus my time and energy into them. But then I also found my love for writing, and that's how I became a writer, and I can do it at home and be with my kids, so that's a great experience. But this doctor detective subgenre is really cool because there is a local author in my area. Her name is Melissa Yee, U and Innes, but she puts together for Yee, and she has a doctor detective series called the Hope Z series, and it's about yeah, she's a doctor who is a detective, gets roped into these mysteries and solves them. And so the latest book was actually her going to Egypt with her boyfriend or fiance, and solving a mystery there. So that is a great series to go ahead and take a look at. And it's really neat that I know Melissa, and we're actually part of the same local book club, so that's a lot of fun. My fourth subgenre is inspirational romance. I tend to not read a lot of romance books, but I really do enjoy the usually inspirational romance kind of falls under Christian fiction, historical fiction, but for that subgenre, I absolutely adored this series here. It's called The Thorn in My Heart, and it's by Liz Curtis Higgs. And there's 4 books, and it actually takes the Jacob, Leah, and Rachel story from the Bible and sets it in the 1780s in Scotland and kind of reimagines that story of how it would have looked like back then. And I really, really loved this series. It was quite something. Although I haven't read it for a while, but I just really remember loving it so much. So I highly recommend this series for that subgenre. And the last subgenre I have is dystopian fantasy. Okay, well, I'm going to add a 6th one just because I love it so much. So dystopian fantasy, and for that I chose the Red Queen series. Interestingly enough, I don't really care for the main character. I find her very frustrating, but I just love the whole concept of the story, and the side characters I find very interesting and move the plot along. So that is that series. But I also wanted to mention historical fantasy, which I think I've mentioned this book several times this past year in some of my videos, and I just love this series so much. It's called The Dark Days Club, and that would be for historical fantasy. 5 stars all the way. I've still yet to read the last book in the series, which I'm really excited for. So there you have it. There's my eclectic book reader tag. I hope you enjoyed it and got to know a little bit more about the subgenres that I enjoy, the genres that I enjoy, and how I go about picking my books. Although, as I said, there really isn't a process I follow. I probably should, but I enjoy doing it this way. Anyways, so as for who I'm going to tag, I'm going to tag Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative. I know she has a great eclectic reading taste as well. And then I'm also going to tag P English Literature and Reading and Retail and Margaret Pinard, which I hope I'm saying your last name correct. It just looks very French and sounds very French. And I'm so happy to have discovered your channel, since you're an author like me and you booktube and authortube, so it's really neat to have a sister in kind of what we do. So yes, you are tagged. And if you haven't been tagged and you really enjoy doing tags and you love this tag, then go ahead and do this tag, and I would love to see it. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.